Mark had always loved hiking alone. It gave him time to think, time to escape the noise of everyday life on a cold autumn morning. He set out on a familiar trail deep in the national forest, a place he had walked dozens of times before. The trees were tall and dense, their branches twisting together like skeletal fingers blocking out the sun. The air felt heavier than usual, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. About an hour into the hike, Mark noticed something strange. The usual sounds of birds and insects had vanished, leaving behind an unnatural silence. He stopped walking, listening carefully, but heard nothing except his own breathing. That was when he sensed it, the feeling of being watched. He turned slowly, scanning the trees, and for a brief moment he saw a tall, dark shape standing between the trunks. It didn't move, it didn't make a sound, but Mark felt a deep, instinctive fear grip his chest. He told himself it was just a trick of the light and continued forward, but the feeling followed him. Every few minutes he caught glimpses of the shadow in his peripheral vision, always just out of sight when he turned his head. The path seemed longer than he remembered, twisting in unfamiliar ways. Trees he didn't recognize loomed over him, their bark scarred with strange markings that looked almost deliberate. As the sun dipped lower, panic began to set in. Mark checked his phone, but there was no signal. No GPS, nothing. He realized he had been walking for hours, yet the trail showed no sign of ending. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him, slow and deliberate, matching his pace. He stopped, and the footsteps stopped too. When he turned around, the shadow stood closer this time, tall and impossibly thin, its form darker than the surrounding woods. Mark ran, branches clawing at his face as he sprinted through the trees. His lungs burned, his legs screamed for rest, but he didn't dare slow down. The footsteps followed, never gaining, never falling behind, just there, steady and patient. The forest seemed to shift around him, paths looping back on themselves, trees appearing where there had been none before. Finally, he burst out of the woods onto the main road, collapsing onto the gravel, gasping for air. When he looked back, the forest stood quiet and still, no sign of the shadow, no sign of pursuit. He staggered home, shaken and exhausted, convinced it had all been a hallucination. But weeks later, Mark returned to the trail with friends, determined to prove it was just fear. As they walked, he noticed strange markings on the trees, exactly where he remembered them. Then one of his friends stopped and asked, "Who is that standing back there?" Mark felt his blood run cold as he realized the shadow was no longer following just him. When Anna moved into her new apartment, she was relieved to finally have a place of her own. The neighborhood was quiet, almost unnervingly so, with identical houses lining the street and porch lights flicking on at the same time each night. Her next-door neighbor, a middle-aged man named Thomas, greeted her warmly on her first day, offering to help carry boxes and welcoming her to the area. He seemed polite, if a little too interested. At first, the odd things were easy to dismiss. Anna noticed her doormat slightly out of place when she returned from work, her trash bin always neatly arranged. Even when she forgot to put it out, she assumed Thomas was just being neighborly, watching out for her while she adjusted to living alone. Then the notes started appearing. Slipped under her door were handwritten messages reminding her to lock her windows, warning her about strangers, and commenting on what time she usually came home. The notes were unsigned, but the handwriting never changed. Anna felt a knot of unease form in her stomach. She stopped waving to Thomas, stopped making eye contact, hoping the messages would stop. they didn't. The notes became more personal, describing what she wore, what she cooked, even when she slept. Anna checked her apartment for hidden cameras, but found nothing. She reported the situation to the police, who advised her to stay alert but said there wasn't enough evidence to act. One night, Anna woke to a soft sound outside her bedroom door, barely breathing. She listened as the handle slowly turned. Testing the lock, her heart pounded so loudly she was sure it would give her away. The handle stopped, and after a long silence, footsteps retreated. Anna didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, she noticed Thomas watching her from his window, his expression blank, unblinking. When she confronted him, demanding to know if he was leaving the notes, he smiled calmly and said he was just looking out for her, reminding her how dangerous the world could be. His tone sent a chill through her body. That same week, Anna installed new locks and a security system. She also found a new apartment across town, packing her things as quickly as she could. On her last night, she heard a knock at her door. She didn't answer. Choosing instead to watch through the peephole, Thomas stood outside, holding a stack of papers. After she moved out, the new tenant contacted her weeks later, asking if she knew why strange notes were appearing under the door. Notes that warned them about dangers. Notes written by someone who claimed to be watching, protecting, and waiting. It was a rainy night when Daniel was driving home from a late shift. The streets were empty, the headlights reflecting off the slick pavement, giving the world a distorted, ghostly glow. As he rounded a bend on the deserted highway, he saw her. A young woman in a soaked white dress, thumb outstretched, standing by the side of the road. He slowed, rolled down the window, and offered her a ride. She smiled faintly, climbed in, and thanked him softly, her voice almost a whisper. She gave him an address not far from the city. But when he glanced at her, he noticed something strange. Her hands were pale, almost translucent, and her eyes seemed distant. As if she were looking through him, Daniel tried to make small talk, asking her where she had come from, but she only smiled and stared out the window. The road stretched on, empty and silent except for the rain tapping against the car. When he finally arrived at the address, he turned to speak to her, but the seat was empty. The door hadn't opened. She hadn't stepped out. There was no sign she had ever been there. Daniel's heart pounded as he checked the back seat, even under the seats, but the car was completely empty, confused and unnerved. He walked up to the house and knocked. The elderly woman who answered listened quietly as he explained about the hitchhiker. And then her face went pale. She told him the chilling truth. That girl died on this road over 20 years ago, the night she was hit by a car. She has been trying to get home ever since, and people sometimes give her rides. Daniel felt his blood run cold, stepping back instinctively, unable to speak. He returned to his car, trembling, and as he drove away, he couldn't shake the feeling of her presence, as if she was still sitting beside him, watching, waiting, looking back over his shoulder. The highway seemed darker than before, the rain heavier, and he swore he saw a white figure on the roadside. Disappearing before he could reach it, Daniel told a few friends about the incident, expecting skepticism, but one of them had a similar story. Another driver had picked up a girl in a white dress on that same stretch of road, only to have her vanish in the same way. Since then, Daniel avoids that highway at night, yet sometimes, driving late in the rain, he can't help but wonder if she's still out there, hitching rides, searching for a way home. a ghost bound to the highway for eternity.